Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Melville Cashan from Sexual Health Alliance, and today my guest is Melinda Porter, and we are going to talk about ethics. So,
Yay.
Melinda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Melinda Porter. I am an LPC supervisor and also an ASEC sex therapist supervisor. I work in Texas and Colorado online, but I have my offices in Texas. I work with the gender and sexuality community and love it. I have a great staff and we love bringing good counseling to the table. So that's very short version.
Yes, wonderful. That's perfect. And we have a conference coming up in June all about ethics. So, ethics is a little different, I think, in the sexuality industry than in other mental health therapy practices. So, we're going to talk today about some things that have to do with ethics and sex therapy and sexuality professions. So, my first question for you, Melinda, how is ethics different in sex therapy than it is in other disciplines?
I whenever I was thinking about, this in our conversation, I was like, how am I going to make this sound like a different variety every time I answer a question? And basically, I can't because it comes down to the fact that we do not talk about sex. We do not talk about sexual health. And so one of the complications that we have in sex therapy is that we don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's not just the client, that's also clinicians, because we're all raised in this community that teaches us not to talk about sex. And so, even though as clinicians we come to the table and we know, hey, this is going to be a good content to work on, it's hard because you want to bring it to the table in a healthy way. And that's one of the things that is difficult to do if you don't ever talk about
Right, for
it.
sure, for sure. Which leads me into the next question. I know we had talked about doing some role playing scenarios in our event coming up in June. So, how does role playing help therapists and sexuality professionals navigate these situations?
Well, I think this is where my repetition is going to hit just a little bit, is that um, we don't talk about it. And so, since we don't talk about it, we don't know how to bring it to the table to have the conversation with clients about it. We have the academic knowledge,
Yeah.
like we know what to say, but we don't know how to say it, especially whenever there's a lot of scaffolding that we have to do for our clients so that they can know what they don't know to say. And to help them say it without shame or anything around, like that. And so I think one of the parts that it comes into play is like intimacy, anatomy, anything about our genitalia we don't talk about. And so I think that the difference is that we have to learn how to have conversations about genitalia
Yeah.
in a way that is structured, healthy and appropriately and secure for the client and for the clinician. And so that's where role play comes into effect, is that I find it very powerful to practice with other clinicians and to practice with people who have some of the same, ethical guidelines that they can go, oh, what about this? What about that? And so I think role play is super powerful and desensitizing.
Yes, for sure. And we all know like the best way to get better at something is to keep practicing. And it's like a safe environment when you're practicing with other clinicians or supervisors, and you can really work through those scenarios together.
Yes, because it is kind of nice to be able to say, like, hey, why doesn't that come out right? And
Yeah.
I find that it brings really neat conversations to the table. And also, therapists are more willing to challenge themselves. Whenever they're in the context of the room and they're in the middle of a session, they just want to bring their best. And so they stay in the framework because obviously they want to be a great therapist. And so they just want to bring their best to the table. I think that this allows them to expand their best and be more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly. I love that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these role play scenarios play out, should we say, in the ethics conference in June.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. All right, so now let's get to the juicy question. Okay, what are some common ethical dilemmas that sex therapists encounter?
Gosh, there are so many. And this is going to, there's just so many. I was trying to think of like how to narrow down. like the common ones. I think the common ones are the ones around people coming in and not understanding what sex therapy is.
Ah, yes.
And whenever I was thinking about us talking, I was like, what's kind of like a general, I think that people don't understand what sex therapists do. And so some of the things that they have to learn whenever they come in is, okay, this is what a sex therapist does, and this is what they don't do.
Yes.
And how they work on it. And that's one of the ones, and doing that without shame. It's really important that a therapist know how to, because sometimes they come in, and I've had older populations come in and think that like I'm gonna introduce them to someone.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going, no, that's not my job title. But it's not out of, shame or anything. It's
Yeah.
out of, we don't talk about it. So therefore, no one knows what questions they need to ask before they come in. And so I think that the most common is that people
Yeah.
just don't know what sex therapists do. Also the nuances with like not being comfortable with asking hard questions.
Mhm.
Like, we don't want to ask a question that's difficult if we don't know if we're stating it correctly. That's throws me back to the role play, because if you've already tried it 7 different ways, then you do feel more comfortable and confident, and you start to correlate how you need to say it with those clients. And so I feel like it's really powerful. But I think the most common is that people just don't know what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I know from working in this industry that a lot of people think that sex therapy is like sex surrogacy, where like you're going to go into the office and have sex with the therapist or do sexual things with the therapist. And while that does exist in sex surrogacy, that
Mhm.
is something that people do. That is not what sex therapy is. Sex therapy
Yeah.
is talk therapy. And so
Yep.
I could see where people have a lot of misconceptions about that.
Yeah, they come in and it's like, oh, we're going to talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to talk about this. And then now, granted, we've got so many great skills and a plethora of ideas and concepts and things to share with the client so that they can take that home and they can utilize that any way that they want to, as far as like with their partners, or with themselves, or all those. We talk about all that stuff. We get into all of it, but it's not acted out in any way in sex therapy. And I think that that's one of the ethical ones that's a little bit the most uncomfortable, especially at first,
Mhm.
to really navigate. And so I try to get therapists to talk about that one the most at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because it's something that they're probably going to encounter one way or another. And so it's better to always be prepared and know ahead of time what you're going to say, what you're going to do, instead of just being caught in the moment, like, oh my gosh, what do I do here?
Yes, 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 yes. I love it.
Yes. And then my last question, it's similar to the one I just asked, but what are some unique or uncommon situations that can arise for sex therapists?
You know what? I guess I used my uncommon one, didn't I? I mean, I guess my common uncommon one. But I do have people who come in and they think that I'm going to introduce them to somebody else, and I have to explain HIPAA and ethics and my, parameters. One of the things that does happen also is that it's hard to explain to communities that are in the, like, say, polyamorous communities.
Uh-huh.
They have such an open concept, and I happen to be certified in consensual non-monogamy. And so one of the things is that so and so tells so and so, but then it's the ethical dilemma is that sometimes you don't know whenever you have like a partner of a partner of a polycule.
Yeah.
And then you end up in this conversation, and you're like, okay, and then that ethical dilemma is, where where am I supposed to go with this? If it's not a part of, then how do I handle it? So that's one that comes up that's really awkward, because you don't know until you usually already been working with the person for a while. And
Yeah.
so that's a more unique one. If they come in and I know that they're a part of the polycule, then I know what questions to ask and kind
Yeah.
of what parameters to set. Um, but if I don't, that's whenever I kind of go, oh, wait, and we kind of stumble in to figuring out the ethics of that. So
Yeah.
That's an uncommon one. I'm trying to think of others. I've had other ones come up. I have some that I'm saving for this summer, but
Yeah. I know. And I know one of the teasers we've been giving like on social media is like your client says they're attracted to you. And so things like that. Does that happen often with sex therapists?
it does. There is this relationship that builds, and you talk about very intimate concepts.
Yeah.
And so it is easy to have that transference. I think that that's one of the reasons why I was so honored to be a part of this summer's event, because I everybody has those moments where they go, "Oh my God, how did I handle that? Did I handle that right? Did I say it
Yeah.
wrong?" And Heather and David and them bringing something to the table like this just makes me so excited, because it does give us an opportunity to bring our best forward as clinicians.
But one more question for you, Melinda. Is there any other like ethical situations you can think of that might come up as a sex therapist?
One of the other ones that I thought of was if people are a part of multiple communities. And so what that means is that we're all human as therapists, and we all want to follow ethics. And so one of the ethical dilemmas is, how do you be a therapist and be in your room? And then also, if you are a part of the kink community, are a part of consensual non-monogamy, and you end up in some circles that are a little bit smaller than
Mhm.
others. And so how to handle those ethical dilemmas, and also have a life.
And that's a really good one, especially if you live in a small community. If you live in a small town and the next nearest city is like several hours away, you're more
Mhm.
likely to end up in these situations because there's less options for kink clubs or play parties or things like that.
Yes, 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 yes. And back in my day, it was about being gay. And so as a gay therapist, it was like, oh, wait, how do I date?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, wait a minute, how does that work? And so it was the same thing. So I went through it personally in figuring out my journey, but I'm excited, because I think we're going to talk about it as far as all of the different communities and kind of challenge some of those in the role playing too.
Yes, I love it. And I know people hear ethics and they're like, snore fest. Like, this is going to be so boring. It's ethics. But when you're talking about ethics and sex therapy or sexuality professions, it gets really interesting. And
Oh,
so we're going to talk about
let's
all
get
these.
real. You can't do Shaw and have anything be boring. Let's get
This
real.
is true. We
It's
always spice
ethics
it
with
up.
Shaw, and it's still going to be good.
Exactly. It's not your grandma's ethics, okay?
Not at all. It's going to be good. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but
No, it's fine. It's going to be so great. All right. So if you want to see Melinda Porter and a bunch of other really wonderful sex therapists and supervisors, you come to our ethics event happening in June. There'll be information below the video with a link. And we can't wait to see you there.
come in to play with us. We would love that.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time today, Melinda.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.